He didn't want money. He wasn't trying to ransom them. He was a collector. For 7 years, he built a secret museum with over 200 masterpieces in his mother's attic, a collection valued at nearly $2 billion. He saw himself as a liberator of art, not a thief. A connoisseur creating a personal sanctuary where beauty could be truly appreciated. This is the story of the most prolific art thief in history who claimed he did it all for love, and how his secret world, hidden just one floor above his unsuspecting mother, came crashing down in the most tragic way imaginable. Section 1. The Dragon's Lair. To get Stephane Breitwieser, you have to see his treasure. He didn't want Picture money. This. You're climbing a narrow staircase into a dusty, dim attic in a quiet house in eastern France. You're in the home of his mother, Mireille, who has no idea she's living directly below one of the greatest private art collections in the world. As your eyes adjust, you see it. Every surface is covered. Walls that should be bare are adorned with priceless 16th and 17th century paintings. A 1526 masterpiece by Lucas Cranach the Elder, Sibylle, Princess of Cleves, hangs in a place of honor. A work so precious, it was once poised for a Sotheby's auction. But this wasn't some messy pile of loot. It was his own curated exhibition. Breitwieser, a man who worked as a simple waiter, meticulously arranged his stolen kingdom. He controlled the humidity and sunlight, treating the attic like a professional gallery. In this space, which he called his Dragon's Lair, he wasn't a criminal. He was a king. He and his girlfriend, Anne-Catherine Kleinklaus, would spend hours there, sometimes in the nude, surrounded by a beauty that was theirs and theirs alone. Breitwieser once explained that great art is so arousing, it's only natural to have a bed nearby for when the moment strikes. The collection was staggering. Between 1995 and 2001, Breitwieser stole an average of one piece every 15 days. In total, he admitted to stealing 239 artworks from 172 different museums, galleries, and cathedrals across Europe. There were Renaissance tapestries, antique weapons, silver goblets, and priceless musical instruments. He could recall the name, artist, and origin of every single item from memory, sometimes even correcting court officials as they read the long list of his crimes at his trial. To him, these weren't just stolen objects. They were his children, rescued from the cold, sterile museums that, in his view, didn't truly love them. He believed he was giving them the adoration they deserved, a belief that twisted theft into an act of salvation. He never sold a single thing. Money didn't matter. As author Michael Finkel wrote, to Breitwieser, beauty is the world's only true currency, and by that measure, he considered himself one of the wealthiest people alive. Section 2. The Art of the Steal. So how did one man, an unemployed waiter with no fancy tools or criminal network, pull off hundreds of heists in broad daylight, often from crowded museums, for nearly 8 years? The answer is as audacious as it is simple. Breitwieser's method was built on careful observation, cool confidence, and an almost reckless disregard for risk. He and his girlfriend Anne-Catherine were a team. They'd travel across Europe, hitting up small and medium-sized regional museums, places with priceless art but not so priceless security. They dressed like any other art-loving tourists. Anne-Catherine would act as the lookout, ready with a cough or a subtle distraction if a guard got too close. Her signal gave Breitwieser the tiny window he needed. His tools were basic: a Swiss Army knife, pliers, and his own 2 hands. While Anne-Catherine kept watch, he'd approach a painting. With surgical precision, he would work the canvas from its antique frame, carefully roll it up, and hide it under his long overcoat. Other times, he'd just lift a small sculpture off its display and walk out. He was so calm, so utterly sure of himself, that nobody ever suspected a thing. He believed that crime works best when nobody even knows it happened. He even studied his craft, briefly apprenticing at a frame shop to perfect his technique for removing paintings without damaging them. This wasn't smash and grab. It was a bizarre form of art conservation. He would often leave the empty frames hanging on the wall, a quiet, ghostly signature of his visit. And the audacity? It's hard to overstate. He once stole an object from a museum, and on the way out, noticed a scratch on his car. Without a second thought, he called the police to file a report, all while the priceless artifact sat in his trunk. The cops who showed up never had a clue. Another time, The couple visited a gallery in Lucerne, Switzerland. It was a warm day, so no coats for concealment. The gallery was empty, and it was directly across the street from a police station. Anne-Catherine saw all the red flags, but Breitwieser couldn't be stopped. He stole an antique bugle, and they walked out calmly. It was this addiction to the thrill, this escalating carelessness, that would eventually be his downfall. Section 3. A radical collector. To understand why Stephane Breitwieser stole, you have to go back to his childhood. He grew up surrounded by beautiful antique furniture and art that his father's family had collected. But when his parents divorced, his father left and took the entire collection with him. Breitwieser felt a deep sense of loss, describing it as being robbed of the only things that held any value for him. This early trauma seems to have planted a seed. A powerful desire to possess and control the beauty he felt was stolen from him. As a young man, he drifted between jobs, mostly waiting tables. He wasn't unintelligent, his passions just lay elsewhere. He'd scour flea markets, buying what little art he could afford, but it was never enough to satisfy his hunger. The thefts started small. A flintlock pistol in 1994, a medieval crossbow in 1995. Each successful heist made him bolder, confirming his belief that he could simply take what he felt should be his. He never saw himself as a common criminal. In his mind, he was an art connoisseur and a radical collector. This was core to his identity. He wasn't driven by profit or greed, which fuels almost all other art crime. Instead, he was driven by what he called an all-consuming love for art. He felt that museums were sterile prisons, where masterpieces were trapped behind glass, unloved by the fleeting crowds. He was their liberator, rescuing them and giving them a proper home where they could be revered every day. This psychological twist allowed him to justify his actions. The law said he was stealing, but he believed he was performing a noble service. And it wasn't just a convenient excuse, it seems to have been a deeply held conviction. He cared for the objects with a devotion that bordered on obsession. In his own narrative, he was the hero of the story. But this romantic ideal curdled into a dangerous addiction. The act of stealing became as intoxicating as the art itself. The risk, the adrenaline, the feeling of outsmarting everyone, it all fed his ego, making him feel, as one account noted, like a master of the universe. It was a hunger that could never be satisfied, pushing him to take bigger and bigger risks. Section 4. The double life. For 7 years, Stephane Breitwieser's life was a staggering contradiction. By day, he was just a regular waiter in France's Alsace region, serving tables for a modest income. He lived with his mother, a seemingly unremarkable man, leading an unremarkable life. Nothing about him suggested he was anything other than what he appeared to be. Polite, unassuming, someone who just blended in. But that was all a carefully maintained facade. In secret, Breitwieser was the keeper of a $2 billion art collection and the architect of one of the boldest crime sprees in modern history. His life was governed by secret rituals. The trips across Europe with Anne-Catherine weren't holidays. They were hunting expeditions. The long hours in the attic weren't just for relaxing. They were for communing with his stolen treasures. The tension of this double life must have been immense. The most immediate threat was his own mother, Mireille. The secret museum was right above her head, but she was completely oblivious Breitwieser kept the attic perpetually locked, forbidding her from ever going in. Imagine the constant fear of discovery, the near misses, the excuses he had to invent to keep his secret safe. A single misplaced key, or a flicker of suspicion from his mom, could have brought his entire world crashing down. His relationship with Anne-Catherine was the only bridge between his two worlds. She was his partner in crime, the only one who knew the full extent of his obsession. Their shared secret created a powerful, if toxic, bond. But as Breitwieser's obsession deepened and his risk-taking got more extreme, that bond began to fray. Anne-Catherine grew more and more anxious, begging him to stop before they got caught. She was trapped in his orbit, a willing participant who was starting to realize their private world was built on a foundation that could collapse at any moment. Section 5. The downfall. Every crime spree, no matter how clever, has a breaking point. For Stephane Breitwieser, it came in November 2001. It wasn't a high-tech alarm or a dramatic police raid. but a simple, foolish mistake born of pure arrogance. He had just gotten too comfortable, too convinced of his own invincibility. Despite a previous run-in with Swiss authorities, he returned to Switzerland and visited a museum in Lucerne, where he stole a 16th-century antique bugle. This time, however, he was careless. A furious Anne Catherine apparently demanded they go back the next day, so she could wipe down any fingerprints he might have left. It was a fatal error. While she went inside, Breitwieser took a walk around the museum grounds. He noticed a man walking a dog, who gave him a funny look. That man was a journalist who walked the same route for years and recognized Breitwieser from a previous visit. The journalist alerted a museum guard, who also recognized him, and they confronted Breitwieser. Panicked, he was arrested on the spot. At first, the Swiss police didn't know who they had. They held him for stealing the bugle, a relatively minor offense. Breitwieser lied, claiming he was just a poor man who wanted a nice Christmas gift for his mother. But authorities were suspicious and held him while they investigated. Weeks passed. Breitwieser sat in a Swiss jail, cut off from the outside world. Meanwhile, Anne-Catherine, who had witnessed the arrest, fled back to France. She raced to Breitwieser's mother, Mireille, and confessed everything. The secret was out. Mireille now knew the locked attic rooms weren't filled with flea market finds, but with a treasure trove of masterpieces stolen from all over Europe. Her reaction was not what anyone could have predicted. Section 6. The Aftermath and Legacy. The final act of this story is its greatest tragedy. Upon learning the truth, Mireille Breitwieser panicked. In a desperate, misguided attempt to destroy the evidence and protect her son, she began to systematically annihilate the $2 billion museum in her attic. Her methods were brutal. She took priceless old master paintings, works by Bruegel, Watteau, and Cranach, and allegedly shredded them with scissors or hacked them to pieces before stuffing them in the garbage disposal. She hurled Renaissance sculptures, silver goblets, and precious artifacts into the nearby Rhone-Rhine Canal. Driven by a mix of maternal instinct and sheer terror, she single-handedly orchestrated one of the greatest cultural destructions in modern history. Of the 239 stolen items, it's estimated she destroyed over 60 paintings and around 100 other objects. When police finally dredged the canal, some treasures were recovered, but many were lost forever. As one Swiss police officer remarked, "Never have so many old masters been destroyed at the same time." Breitwieser was eventually sentenced to prison time in both Switzerland and France, but his obsession wasn't cured. After his release, he was arrested again in 2011 and again in 2019 for more thefts. In 2023, he was sentenced to house arrest with an electronic ankle monitor until 2031. The man who once saw himself as a master of the universe, surrounded by immense beauty, is now a prisoner in his own home, confined by the same obsession that once made him feel free. His legacy is complicated. To museums and law enforcement, he's a criminal responsible for an incalculable cultural loss. But in the public eye, he remains a bizarrely compelling figure, the gentleman thief who stole not for greed, but for love. His story forces us to ask weird questions about art, ownership, and obsession. Was he a romantic driven to possess beauty? Or was he just a glorified shoplifter whose selfish desires led to the permanent destruction of irreplaceable art? Perhaps the truth is, he was both. The story of Stephane Breitwieser is a wild reminder of how a hunger for beauty can curdle into a dangerous obsession. What do you think? Was he a romantic collector or a destructive criminal? Let us know in the comments. And for more deep dives into fascinating true crime stories, make sure you subscribe. In the end, Breitwieser's secret museum, built as a monument to his love of art, became its tomb. His quest to possess beauty at any cost ultimately led to its annihilation, leaving behind a tragic story of what happens when passion becomes pathology and a collector becomes a destroyer.